Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with my ideal cycle of Prokofiev piano concertos. This is by popular demand, more or less, because, I did the ideal Prokofiev symphony cycle, and we really need to do the piano concertos once we do the symphonies. And there are only 5 of them, so it won't be too long a talk, and it's not terribly difficult. For complete piano concerto cycles, by one group or guy, there really aren't that many options. But there are so many performances of individual works that I think it makes sense to do an ideal cycle of our own and to pick and choose. And that way, you're not stuck with just one group all the way through. Usually, who are the cycles? There's like Previn Ashkenazi, which is very good. There's Berov Mazur, which is very good. There's the new Bavuzet on Chandos, which is also quite good. And there's the earlier Chandos one, which is broken up between, Boris Berman and Horacio Gutierrez or something like that, with Yarvi conducting all this stuff. And it's very good. They're good. There's that, the Gergiev Toradze, which is also quite good. And there's the John Browning with Leinsdorf, which is fine. Go get one if that's what you want. But that really sort of gets you pretty well set for Prokofiev piano concerto cycles. There's others, the Krynev and Fedosiev or something like that. There's that one that most lately appeared on Errato. Maybe something else will come to mind. Victoria Postnikova. Well, that one's horrible, because she does everything at half tempo. But the bottom line is, I think you're better off. I really do think you're better off going by individual choices, because you have such a wide selection. And the reason we really have such a wide selection, well, there are 2 reasons. First of all, like the symphonies, the piano concertos are widely differing in terms of their popularity. Some of them, the third is incredibly popular. The others, a lot less so. Really substantially less so. Kind of amazingly less so, actually. And 4 and 5, no one cares about 4 and 5, especially 4, because 4 is for left hand only. So, you find it showing up on one-armed piano collections, left hand alone piano discs, which pop up now and then, and they haul it out and play it then. But I don't think anybody likes the 4th concerto particularly. And so, we need to, it's fun to be selective. And so I'm going to give you a list again, and I can't stress this enough. The point here is not to say everything I pick is the best. No, the point is to say this is a cycle with no weak links, because there may be 10 fabulous versions of one of these concertos out there, any one of which you could slot in. And that's why I like to see your lists too, because you're going to come up with all of the ones I don't include, and you'll be just as right as I will, and we're going to have a bunch of really fine Prokofiev piano concerto cycles coming out of it. And I do want to make another point that I saw coming out of this from the commentary. In my talk about I think it was, I don't know, what was it? I don't remember what it was, but we were talking about, Berlioz's Harold in Italy. I was talking about historical recordings, and I went on kind of a rant about how there isn't anything in the basic repertoire that was done in horrible sound in the 30s or 40s or 20s that you can't get in modern wonderful sound that's just as good, maybe different, but just as good. And I just want to stress, I really believe that. I honestly, truly believe that when it comes to these basic repertoire pieces, where there are so many recordings by so many excellent artists, first-class recordings, you do not need to settle for some grotty old historical performance just because someone says they're the best. They're wrong, categorically wrong, demonstrably wrong. I'm telling you, it's a cult mentality. The idea that all the great artists are dead, or that any artist is irreplaceable. Let me tell you something, folks. Artists don't matter. Works matter. Composers matter. Artists are are a dime a dozen. They're out there. They're going to do great work, and we're going to be the beneficiaries of it. If it's especially now that so much stuff has been recorded. The only artists who matter are the ones whose work is completely sui generis. That is, who make recordings of pieces that are completely unique, that you can't otherwise get. And they're only valuable until you get more, until there's more of them. And you can start making comparisons and deciding who does it best and what the parameters of legitimate performance are for the work in question. All of that is ephemeral. Performances are ephemeral. It's very ironic, isn't it, that, we talk about how ephemeral live performances are, and they are. You hear it once and it's gone. A performance is by nature an ephemeral thing, and a recording, it may preserve that in a certain way, but it can't preserve it against other performances of the same thing. And that's what's happened. That's what's happened to the classical music industry. I mean, you should all sort of sit back and take notice of this fact, because they've recorded so much, so frequently, by so many people, and we have churned out so many first-class artists, really first-class artists, orchestras, conductors, soloists, singers, you name it. There's a billion of them, and the conservatories are churning out more of them all the time. They have made the value of the individual performance zero. Zero. That's why the record industry is what it is now. The value of a classical recording is zero. Look at what you can buy for no money at all. I mean, the next thing they're going to be doing is paying us to take the recordings. That's what's happening in the classical music world now. Performers pay labels to issue their performances and distribute them. There's no money in marketing and sales, none whatsoever, or advertising. God forbid they should advertise. But all of the money is in performance, getting the name out there, and just being another version of the same old, same old. And the value of all of that, because this has happened, is zero. That's why we get the big boxes. That's why the major labels reshuffle the same stuff over and over again. This is an incontestable point in my opinion. So let's just be clear as we go forward. And when we talk about this, we'll bring it up again, as circumstances warrant when we talk about these various performances. But the truth is that no matter how much you love Furtwängler or Schnabel or pick an artist, they don't matter. Beyond your personal preference. Your personal preference you're entitled to. They can matter to you as much as you have as much significance as you give them. But in the grand scheme of things, in the world of, let's say, Beethoven, no, they don't matter. In the world of Prokofiev piano concerto performances, no, they don't matter. And that's just the truth. It's the reality. And rather than being something that is distressing, it's really something we should celebrate, because look at all the choice we have. And with that said, here we go. Piano Concerto number 1, Martha Argerich. This is her EMI recording with Dutoit conducting. It's actually coupled with the third concerto, which she's done 400 times. And I picked her for number 1 because I saw her do it live, and it was just unbelievable. And this performance is pretty unbelievable, too. It's absolutely stunning. She's a marvel. And this is one of her really great recordings. Prokofiev number 1. Now there were other choices. Like I said, I could have picked one out of the complete cycles, but I think this is just great. She never did a complete cycle. And most of the artists we're going to be talking about here did not do complete cycles. That's what makes, I think, this list kind of interesting. We're going to have 5 different pianists, and only one of them did a complete cycle. Only one. And I could have picked another one, but, other choices in number 1 would be Richter on Superphone, or anyone from, the cycles I just mentioned, because the first is not a hard concerto to do well. All you have to do is play the crap out of it. And it's only 15 minutes long in, 3 or 4 tiny little movements. It has a wild glockenspiel part. Aside from that, Martha Argerich is your person for the first concerto. For the second concerto, now the second concerto is fascinating because I think it's the greatest of them, and there's also a similarity to the symphonies in that the Fifth Symphony is the most popular, but number 6 is probably the greatest. And so here again, the third piano concerto is the most popular, but number 2 is really the greatest. It's a great piece of music. Absolutely fabulous. And it's gaining in popularity. Now, I saw Toradze play it with Gergiev live. And I mean, he basically reduced the piano to kindling. At the end of the first movement cadenza, he was standing up and pounding like crazy. It was really exciting. It was amazingly exciting. And there are some amazing and exciting performances and also some very thoughtful ones. But I have chosen one that I think sort of treads the line between just pulverizing excitement and intelligence, because it's a very, very beautiful and interesting work that allows the interpreter a lot of ways to characterize and shape the music. And my choice, this is the only one from a complete cycle, is Bronfman. Bronfman with Zubin Mehta and the Israel Philharmonic. This is a great, great, great Prokofiev concerto cycle. It is my preferred Prokofiev concerto cycle for all 5 of them. Frankly, I don't think there's anything better out there. And both Mehta and the Israel Phil are wonderful, and the sonics are really good, and Bronfman is just tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. So that's number 2. Number 3. Now, number 3 is the really, really crazy popular one. So this is the one that's going to be, a tough pick, because there are standard picks, right? There's Argerich, there's the John Browning Leinsdorf, the one on EMI Warner, not the later one with the Boston Symphony, although it's very good too. The one on RCA, but I like the earlier one better. It was coupled with the Ravel left-hand concerto, and so there's that one, and there's the Grafman Zell, and there's the Kertész, what's his name? Kachin. That's the guy, Julius Kachin. I mean, there are so many really fine versions of the third concerto out there. And I decided to think a little bit outside the box, because I'm leaving all of those to you to include in your cycles if they're the ones you like. I chose Freddie Kempf, Andrew Litton on Bis. Why? First of all, this is an amazing disc. You get the second concerto in a fabulous performance, the third concerto, and the second piano sonata, all on one 80-minute SACD. And I chose this not because the performances are fabulous. I mean, Freddie Kempf is an amazing pianist. Litton is at his absolute best in Russian music, and he's doing a symphony cycle that's been very, very good for the most part, except for the fifth, which was, But the real reason I picked this is because, again, I want to make the point. The great artists are not all dead. The great performances and recordings are still being made. We should support them, when they come out, because they deserve our support. And I mean, Bis has done marvelous, marvelous work. It's a great label. These are great performances of these 2 concertos. There are none better. You may like Argerich, you may like Byron Janis, you may like Browning, you may like, Ashkenazi. I mean, make the list. Kissin, who knows? There's a zillion of them. And they're all really good. But this one is as good, if not better, than anything out there. And so it deserves your support. And I am happy to select Freddie Kempf with it's his Wilhelm Kempf. He's not related. He has one less F in Kempf. It's Kempf, with Andrew Litton and the Bergen Philharmonic. Yes, they're doing the Prokofiev stuff. It's great. Just great. Nothing not to love. Now, number 4. Here is where things get interesting, because as I said, nobody likes number 4. It's for the left hand. It's a strangely structured piece. It has this allegro, then a big, long, slow movement, then a moderate something or other, and then a return to the music of the opening for like a minute and a half as a wrap-up. And it's kind of angular and not terribly memorable melodically. And Prokofiev wrote it for, Wittgenstein, for the Ravel left-hand guy, and the Strauss left-hand music, who was actually not a very good pianist and not very interesting in his musical taste either. Apparently, he disliked almost everything that was written for him. Korngold did a left-hand piece. Everyone does left-hand pieces for him. He doesn't play them. And, he played some of them. I don't know. Anyway, we have this left-hand concerto, number 4. And it's so I don't, it's not my favorite either, but I picked a performance that I think was a little bit off the beaten path, and I chose it for that reason. It's a wonderful performance, don't get me wrong, of a work that no one particularly cares for, and I just think this is a fun choice. Rudolf Serkin and Eugene Ormandy. Isn't that great? I mean, come on, let's face it. I mean, Serkin, it's Serkin, you know? It was coupled with his Reger piano concerto. I mean, what a coupling. Reger's piano concerto and the Prokofiev number 4 for the left hand. Here it is. This is a Japanese Sony. Of course, this is in the Serkin enormous box. You may be able to find it. This is like all the strange things Serkin did. Well, some of them. You get the Brahms piano concertos, actually. This is, the cycle with Zell. Yeah, with Zell. But you also get the Prokofiev 4th and Bartok's 1st concerto, which it's really cool. It's just a wonderful collection of stuff that you won't otherwise find together under the Serkin rubric. So I was very happy to get this, and I'm happy to recommend it in case anybody cares. And if you don't feel bad. The other reason I'm recommending this version is because you don't have to get it. No one's going to know. No one's going to care. It's like the wonderful Julia Child thing about when you drop the turkey on the floor, just pick it up and dust it off and serve it to your guests. No one's going to know if you don't tell them. So you can avoid the 4th concerto, and no one's going to know if you don't tell them. You can lie about it. Tell them you have the Serkin, but you can't find it because it's in a big box somewhere and you put it away. And, you can find your own. Tell me which ones you love. Okay, concerto number 5. This may be an obvious choice, but I think it's has to be recognized, and that's Richter, who was, of course, one of the great pianists of the universe and one of the great Prokofiev pianists in the universe. And it's. I mean, what am I supposed to say? Who's it? Witold Rowicki with the Warsaw National Deutsche Grammophon. It was an original. It won all kinds of awards. It won the Academy Grand Prix du Disque. It's a major recording, and I'm going to allow myself the luxury of taking the obvious choice in the 5th concerto and let you go figure out which other 5th concertos you want that are not Richter. You can't have it. It's mine. It's all mine. It's in my list. So there we have it, the ideal list of the 5 Prokofiev piano concertos. Wonderful music, very unequally distributed, but it's great stuff. It's all great stuff. Well, maybe not the 4th concerto. I mean, what is that thing? I have no idea. I don't know what he was thinking, but it's generally wonderful music. Some of you may love the 4th concerto more than I do, and you may have your choices. You could go for like Leon Fleischer or some other like left-handed piano maven who does these pieces. Pick them, have a good time, and keep on listening. Thank you, folks, for joining me. Take care.